So I took the GRE as a fourth-year physics undergraduate student with initial scores by Power Prep in the low 320s. My quant scores hovered stubbornly at a 164, 165. A lot of the errors could be attributed to carelessness or errors in reading comprehension, or I would pick the wrong answer when I knew what the right one was unintentionally. Verbal scores hovered quite disappointingly and stubbornly at mid 150s to high 150s. Main losses in reading comprehension. I came across Target Test Prep through Reddit. My final score in the GRE was a 166 verbal, 169 quantitative for a combined 335 with a 6.0 on the analytical writing. Prior to TTP, I spent about 2 weeks on 3 main materials, right? The online package that's bundled with GRE registration, the GRE book, 3-part big book, the modern one, not the old version, and a few questions on GregMath, mainly focusing on quant instead of verbal. Now, TTP was acquired with about 1.5 to 2 weeks left of prep. I acquired it late on my preparation journey, but I would say even in that short time, it probably had the most positive effect. If you look online, the big names being thrown out for test preparation is TTP, GregMath, and Magoosh. I've done GregMath as the other principal service, so I'm in a good position to give a comparison between the two, and I will tell you quite definitively that I think TTP is the superior service, albeit it is more expensive, but I think it's worth the money. I personally think it's worth the money, and I'll go through it with you why that's the case and how it was so effective even in the short time that I used it. So when you start using TTP, it brings you through a diagnostic test. The diagnostic test gives you a graphical representation through like bar graphs of how well or how poorly you've done in different sections for verbal and for quant as well. So it really helps you identify saying whether your weakness is verbal, whether your weakness is quant it's quite meaningless. It's a meaningless thing to say. It's very low resolution because like what about it is weak, and this is what TTP will help you identify. Remember that Pareto principle, right? 80% of your mark losses are coming from like 20% of your problems. Your mileage may vary, maybe 70 to 20, 60 to 20, doesn't matter. Base principle is that a majority of your mark losses are attributed to an actually quite small subset of problem types. So the most time efficient and effective way to raise your score is to A, identify what these problematic segments are, B, what theory governs them, and C, repetition and mastery. What TTP is excellent at is that identify weaknesses and allowing for targeted revision. If you're like me, you didn't have all the time in the world to do everything, right? The quant section on TTP is absolutely comprehensive. It's massive. You probably need a good month, 2 months of concerted effort to finish it, every single medium and hard exercise, just as neglecting the easy ones, which I don't think is that valuable to do. I'll explain in more detail later on. So you go to TTP, you find out what your weaknesses are, but through the diagnostic test, you go to the lessons corresponding to those topics. They will use the exact same wording as the diagnostic test for easy referral. You take notes on what theory is being used in those sections, what neat tricks, shortcuts, problem-solving strategies are used, and then you attempt the medium and hard questions. I don't think the easy ones are worth doing because the medium and hard questions more accurately reflect what is done in the GRE. Now, most questions in the GRE are about the same difficulty as the medium questions in TTP's quant. The hard questions are very challenging and time-consuming. You might think that doing the hard questions then is not worth the effort. I would say that's a incorrect perspective. The hardest question of the GRE that I got were somewhere between the difficulty of the medium and hard questions on TTP's quant. Now remember that GRE is a weighted test. So if you do well on 1, 2, 3 very difficult problems on quant, you've acquired yourself a significant amount of points because it is weighted. More difficult questions are worth more points. Simple as that. So it's absolutely worth doing the medium and hard questions. topic by topic revision is what TTP excels at. It helps you identify and fix your weaknesses. And it's structured in the same way you learn in a conventional classroom, right? Overarching theory, practice, and solutions. And the solutions are detailed. They have audio and video format for whichever you prefer. They provide the strategies necessary beyond just the theory. Strategies, that's important. Having used GREGMAT, I can actually provide a very informed and authoritative comparison. I'll tell you that TTP is better. Even correcting errors on ETS, on GREGMAT, on the GRE book, be it for verbal or for quant, it feels like you're learning random pieces of trivia. So it really raises the question of, do I actually understand what's being tested? If there's an analog question, will I know how to solve it? And often the answer is no. And this is what TTP excels at, providing you a unified theory to answer specific types of questions, providing mastery through repetition. It will get repetitive, but that's a good thing. If you feel it's repetitive, that means you're familiar with the question type, familiar with the strategy, familiar with the theory, increasingly familiar. If you revise without structure, even if you can get questions you used to get wrong right the second time, it doesn't mean much. It does not mean much, to be honest. You need to develop mastery through repetition with structure. Doing one question correct is not indicative of understanding at all. You need to know A, identify question type, B, what's the theory, and C, what's the technique to get the right answer. That combination applied consistently throughout, that's subject mastery, and that's what TTP provides. It's something that GREGMAT does not provide. It's something that even the GRE material doesn't provide. And a lot of the skills that you learn in TTP are perfectly applicable to ETS material. You can apply them and you can see that, oh, they work. They help me obtain the correct answer. I actually understand what I'm doing instead of going through the motions. And that really builds confidence and competency. It should be noted that TTP's quant preparation focuses more on mathematical theory, which is the right way to do it. But verbal takes a slightly different approach. Verbal is about more so vocabulary and strategies. We don't teach language subject or linguistics as rigorously as you would, say, physics or chemistry or mathematics. It's just the way language is. So the structure for language is a bit different. And because verbal is if you look at performance on the verbal section of the GRE, students tend to do far worse. A 166 on verbal is 90-something percentile, where a 166 on quant might be high 70s to low 80s because there's a lot of subjectivity in language. And TTP helps apply, it tries its best to apply a theory or question-solving strategies to specific problem types to minimize on ambiguity. And that's very important. That's very important, especially for reading comprehension. Certain question types will lean more to certain answers. It'll teach you what traps are evident in certain questions that you should not fall for. That's a big one as well. These are the kinds of advantages that TTP confers that I don't think any other of its competitors does. As far as personal advice with GRE Prep, I would say give yourself ample time. You know yourself. You know how talented or how good you are, whether you're balancing a job or not. That's a big one. And remember that this is a reasoning test. It is a reasoning test, but rote memorization has value. There is value in knowing. If you are scoring low 320s on the GRE, time is probably a problem for you. How do we save time? And what's an easy way to save time? Rote memorization of certain things, vocabulary, arithmetic geometric progression formulae, properties of exponents, properties of the special angles. Having information that you can retrieve quickly matters. It's not enough to know. The time of retrieval needs to be rapid. And you've got to revisit content frequently to beat the forgetting curve. We have a natural tendency to have a decline in memory retention over time, and that's what we want to defeat. We defeat that by revising regularly with understanding. Don't do it in a mechanical way. Even if you've seen the question before, it feels predictable to you, ask yourself, what's this question type? What's the theory? What's the strategy to apply? What tools am I going to use? practice your verbal and quant together in tandem, preferably within the same day. Don't do 3 days verbal, 3 days quant, 3 days verbal, 3 days quant, that kind of thing. Don't do that, because you may lose retention, you may lose knowledge and skills, strategies that you suddenly forget to apply after a few days, after 48 hours. It happens, even to the best of us. Every time you forget something, you need to relearn something, you are costing yourself time and you are invalidating prior effort. Time is an investment, and it's something you should exercise wisely. Do not lose it. And even for even for highly intelligent people, their ability to focus on an intellectually stimulating activity is limited to, say, 2 to 3 hours of high concentration. After that, it starts to decay. This is even more so for regular people. You know yourself best. You know how well your memory, your attention can be held. So give yourself semi-regular breaks in a predictable fashion, even if you feel you don't need them, because our brains did not evolve to focus on activities like these for such prolonged periods of time. We are notoriously stingy with the way we use energy. Thinking uses a lot of energy. The brain is the organ which uses the most energy of all other organs in the body. So you might encounter natural resistance, unwillingness to work past a certain amount of time. And that's when your break should kick in. Give yourself a stable schedule that you can abide by. Have the discipline. Don't rely on motivation, rely on discipline. A steady schedule that you can abide by. What degree of mastery should you develop? And this is something that TTP will help you with topic by topic revision. When you look at a question, preferably within first 10 to 15 seconds, you should identify what is it testing, what theory should I use, and maybe what strategies I can employ. It has to come like that, instinctively. You don't have the luxury of time. You don't have the luxury to spend 30 seconds, 40 seconds just meandering about in your brain. You don't have that luxury. The degree of proficiency you develop is that 10 to 15 seconds of identification and problem solving after those 10 to 15 seconds. That's what you should aspire towards. As for vocabulary, TTP has a vocabulary list. Magoosh, GregMat, pick any of them. TTP's is pretty comprehensive as well, because it provides, it grades the difficulty of words. So memorize about 1,000 to 1,200 of them. That's mandatory. If you want a good score on verbal, that's mandatory. You'll note that having the vocabulary helps you tackle the sentence completion questions very quickly. Ideally, I finish those in about 30 seconds, or sometimes even less, and that gives me a lot of time for reading comprehension. That's where you want to dump the bulk of your time in, because those are truly the most challenging. So the long and short of it, start to finish, is use TTP Diagnostic Test to identify what your weaknesses are. Pareto principle, remember, target your weakest areas first. So highest priority is the weakest areas, then the second weakest, third weakest. You want to minimize the mark loss. You want to minimize as much mark loss with as little time spent as possible. Drill and repeat. Once things start getting repetitive, predictable, that's when you know there's mastery. When you can spend that 10-15 seconds, immediately know how to approach the question. That's when you know you have mastery of that topic, and you carry out over several topics. Within the last 2 weeks of your GRE, you shouldn't really be learning anything new. Everything should be explored territory. You should know pretty much everything. Go through what you've done wrong. Keep an error log of what you've done. Say section X, subsection 2, question 4, I got it wrong. Why so? What is the correct strategy? Revisit what you've done wrong. Repeat, and practice rote memorization for words, theories, formulae. That's pretty much it.